My name is Rebecca, and I'd like to share something that happened to me when I was about 12 years old. Every Thursday or Friday, my mom would go to the laundromat because we didn't have a washer or dryer at our house at the time. I really didn't like staying home with my sister since it was boring, so I always tagged along with my mom to help her. Even if it was just as boring, at least I always got snacks for going, so a win was a win. One Thursday evening, my mom was super busy, so we ended up going to the laundromat pretty late. Since the laundromat was located in a rundown neighborhood, it was a bit scary during that time of day. But since I'd been there multiple times at night, it wasn't that scary. Everything started the same, helping my mom load clothes into the washer, nothing out of the ordinary. Afterward, I started to get a bit hungry, like I always do, so I asked my mom if she could give me some money to buy snacks at the gas station. She handed me $10 and I left. The gas station wasn't too far, and since I'd always go alone, it was normal. This time, however, I felt an odd feeling, but I shrugged it off. I walked into the gas station and grabbed chips and a drink. I started to leave, but an old rusty truck caught my eye for some reason. I squinted and saw a middle-aged man with a slight beard. He was staring straight at a brick wall, but when he saw me, he made the widest smile I'd ever seen. I thought he was being nice, so I smiled back. But as I began to walk away, he followed me with his eyes. My heart sank. I bolted to the laundromat, and as I looked back, I could still see the man staring at me with the same smile on his face. As I made it to the laundromat, I could still see the truck, though only slightly, and I felt a bit safe. I opened my chips and began eating. As I was finishing my chips, I saw him enter, with the same face, still staring at me. Chills went up my spine. I took my eyes off of him to ease me and decided to look out the window I was sitting behind. To my horror, the man had parked in front of where I was eating. As soon as he saw my mom coming out of the bathroom, he walked out and got into his truck. When he began pulling out of the driveway, he continued to stare at me and finally took his eyes off as he drove away. I finally felt relieved. When he had left, I told my mom about everything. She looked just as scared as I looked, so we hurried up folding the clothes and left. I'm entering my freshman year of high school this year, and I still get chills remembering the incident.
I'm going to tell you about the scariest thing that ever happened to me. Back then, I was living with my dad in a one-story house in a nice, quiet neighborhood. Everything was pretty normal during the day, but at night, whenever I climbed into bed and turned the lights off, I'd always hear an ominous scratching noise coming from everywhere and nowhere. Typically, it would only last a few seconds before stopping, and then I'd fall asleep. But that scratching grew louder and more frequent with each passing night. I eventually told my dad about it, but he just brushed it off, saying it was the house settling and that I should get used to it. Personally, I didn't want to get used to it, but I wasn't one to argue with my dad, so I did what he said. To block out the noise, I started sleeping with my pillow over my ears, and that seemed to help, at least for a little while. After a week, the scratching got so loud that it woke me up in the middle of the night, even with the pillow. At that point, I'd had enough. I had to find out what was making that noise and put a stop to it, or else I'd never get a decent night's sleep again. Rubbing my eyes, I sat up and listened again, placing a hand to my ear so I could figure out where it was coming from. To my surprise, the sound seemed to be coming from inside the walls, and it was moving. This startled me at first because I thought a person might be living inside the wall, possibly with bad intentions. But after thinking it over, it was probably just some raccoons or something. I climbed out of bed and followed the noise out of my room, then made my way down the hall. I had to tiptoe the entire way so I wouldn't wake my dad. If a raccoon really was crawling around inside the walls, then I could just scare it away by myself. At least, that's what I thought. The sound led me all the way down to my basement, a place I usually avoided. Whenever I went down there, I always felt uneasy, like I was being watched. I honestly wanted to go back to bed and forget the whole thing, but that scratching wasn't going away anytime soon. So I put on a brave face and opened the door. A chill ran down my spine as I peered down the stairway leading into the shadowy abyss. The scratching stopped for a second before picking back up again, almost as if whatever was causing it was now aware of my presence. For a moment, I thought I was making a big mistake going down there by myself. What if the animal was dangerous? What if it was bigger than me? I ignored those questions and scoffed at my own cowardice. I'm not scared of some dumb animal, I thought to myself, trying to be brave. All I have to do is be really sneaky and catch it by surprise. Feeling confident in my new plan, I immediately put it into action. I slowly descended the stairs in my bare feet. Surely that would be enough to quiet my footsteps, but as an extra precaution, I kept a hand over my mouth to muffle my breathing. It all proved pointless in the end. The wood creaked loudly under my feet with every step I took, making stealth pretty much impossible. So much for that idea, I thought while scampering the rest of the way down. If the creature was only vaguely aware of my presence before, then it undoubtedly knew my exact location now. The sound seemed to grow more frantic the closer I got to its source. I quickly followed it to a crawl space I didn't know I had. It was a small square opening in the side of a wall, just big enough for a child to squeeze through, with a little door that was slightly ajar. Since I'd already come this far, I laid flat on my stomach and crawled inside using my elbows, much like a soldier crawling under barbed wire. There was so little room that I had to stay as flat as possible to fit. It was dark and cramped, but I kept crawling until the sound suddenly disappeared. I paused for a moment, waiting for it to start again, but it never did. A little anticlimactic, but at least it had finally stopped. Before I could even think of getting out, however, I heard a loud squeak behind me. I quickly looked over my shoulder as fast as I could. To my absolute horror, a pack of rats was right behind me, blocking the way I came. I screamed and started crawling further into the tunnel as the rats gave chase, hungrily snapping their teeth at my feet. I didn't get very far though, because I soon reached a dead end. I rolled onto my back and watched helplessly as the rats approached me. I quickly raised both of my bare feet off the floor and bent my knees, preparing to kick them if they got too close.
"Stay back, or else!"
I stuttered, but the rats weren't scared of me in the slightest. And why would they be? Nosy little girls in pajamas probably wouldn't come down there very often, so I must have looked like a juicy all-you-can-eat buffet. Tears ran down my cheeks as I lay there, trembling, bare feet still raised in the air, waiting for them to attack. It felt like hours, but really it was only a minute or two. As if to taunt me, the rats kept snapping their teeth the closer they got to my bare soles. One of them tried to bite me, so I kicked it before quickly pulling my foot back. That must have angered them, because without warning, they all lunged at me, and that's when I screamed at the top of my lungs while kicking wildly. In an instant, I was swarmed by claws, teeth, and fur. They bit into every inch of exposed skin they could find. Arms, legs, feet, everywhere. I tried to defend myself, but it was like fighting an ocean. I was only saved when my dad came running into the basement with a baseball bat after hearing me scream.
"Where are you?"
He shouted with a fatherly concern.
"In here!"
I cried out while fighting off the rodents as best I could. The rats must have been startled by my dad's yelling and thunderous footsteps, because they immediately scurried away, leaving me covered in scratches and bites from head to toe. My dad got me out of the crawl space and took me to a hospital to get bandaged up and to get a tetanus shot. I was still shaken by what I had experienced, but also relieved to be alive. My dad apologized to me 1,000 times while I recovered in the hospital bed, saying he should have taken me seriously, and I forgave him. He called an exterminator the next morning to gas the whole house. My dad and I had to spend a week in a hotel before returning home, and when we did, we never heard any more scratching inside the walls. Years have passed since then, but I'll never forget that awful sensation of being swarmed by rats trying to eat me alive.
It was a Monday night in San Diego, California. I was driving back from my girlfriend's house. Just for a little context, I'd gone over to spend some quality time with her. We laughed, drank, talked about love, typical 21-year-old relationship stuff. As always, we turned on the TV to bond over something we weirdly both enjoyed, the news. I know, not the usual bonding material, but it worked for us. At first, it was the same dry stories about politics and government nonsense. Just as we were about to turn it off and call it a night, a breaking news alert came on. A young girl, around 7 years old, had gone missing. She was last seen at a nearby playground, according to her frantic aunt. Now, where I'm from, kidnappings aren't common. So when we heard that, it hit me hard, left me with chills. Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, it was already 1 a.m. I had work the next morning, so I kissed my girlfriend goodnight, got in my old 2000 Ford Ranger, and started it up. As soon as I turned the key, the check engine light came on. Whatever, I muttered. The light had been on and off for years. I pulled out of her driveway and headed off. That's when things started to get weird. I was about 60 miles from my usual gas station, running low on fuel and driving on a dark, isolated road. No streetlights, no cars, nothing but the dim glow of my headlights cutting through the blackness. Then I saw something up ahead. At first, it was just a shadow, a tall, unmoving figure. I figured it had to be a tree or a sign, but as I got closer, my gut told me otherwise. About 6 feet from my truck, I slammed on the brakes. It wasn't a tree. It was something else. What I saw still haunts me. Standing in front of me was a towering creature, easily 8 feet tall. It had multiple horns sprouting from its head and jet black, empty eyes. A long, twisted grin stretched across its face, exposing blood-soaked teeth. Its body was static, like a broken TV signal, flickering and shifting. All I could clearly make out were its claws, long, razor sharp, and dripping with blood. And beside it stood a little girl. She was wearing a pink dress, stained red. Blood dripped from where her face should have been. It was just gone, skin torn away, nothing but gore and darkness. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Then the creature slowly lifted its arm, extended a claw, and pointed directly at me. That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed. It was 7 a.m. The nurse told me I'd been found unconscious in my running truck parked on the side of the road. After she left, I tried to piece everything together. My head was spinning. Above me was a TV. I grabbed the remote and flipped it on, tuning into the same news station. The anchor's voice made my stomach turn. We're following up on last night's breaking story here in San Diego. A 7-year-old girl was found dead early this morning at a local park. Her body was discovered beneath a swing set, covered in blood. We warn viewers, this information is graphic. Paramedics report the child's face appeared to have been completely removed, likely by a wild animal. I threw up on myself right then and there. A week later, I traded in that old Ford Ranger for a used Honda Civic. I haven't driven to my girlfriend's house since that night, and when I do visit, it's only during the day, and I always take a different route home. But I needed answers. I started digging online, desperate to understand what I saw. I know it sounds crazy, but I searched for demons, haunted places, anything. Eventually, I came across a website listing the most haunted locations in San Diego. I scrolled past creepy stories about abandoned houses and haunted lakes until one article stopped me cold. Haunted park near Mira Mesa. That's where my girlfriend lives. I kept reading. The article described multiple reports of children disappearing from that very park over the years, only to be found the next morning, dismembered, or worse. It mentioned a legend dating back to the 1950s. A man had reportedly summoned a demonic force at that same park, and ever since, strange sightings and deaths have been reported. I felt my body go cold. Every hair stood on end. And now, right now as I write this, I swear I hear whispers outside my window. They're getting louder. Oh God, I can see it. That same horned, flickering creature is standing outside. It's smiling at me.